To moderate this panel, we have Mr. Daniel Stapper, Senior Program Officer at PACT. A hand of applause to him as he is already on stage.
Sure, yeah, and this is advancing. Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Bonjour tout le monde, merci pour l'opportunité. Et notre collègue francophone, bonjour.
It's really a pleasure to be with you today. Really, what a rich day already of sharing different perspectives. I hope it's been really valuable for all of you here. It certainly has been once more for me. My name is Daniel Stapper. I'm a Canadian geologist, geoscientist, working with the International NGO Pact. Before we call our panelists up, this will be an exciting way to, I think, end our day today. We're going to make it an interactive session. But before we call our panelists up, I'm going to present a little bit about PACT's experience in the past few years, specifically on our work around mercury-free gold mining. So without further ado, let's go into the presentation, please. And I'll move a little bit quickly. I don't want to be too repetitive. We've covered so many of the core themes. But hopefully, in my slide deck, what I've presented, there will be some interesting and insightful pieces to bring forward that might not have been covered yet. Yeah, sure. Sure. I guess the presentation's coming. Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll mention that after my remarks, we're going to have a few different representatives of the private sector, which is, of course, such an essential component of the conversation. I really appreciated actually the miners who were with us in the previous panel. That is just fantastic. I really think that all these, international forums, we need, as the professor from Australia also mentioned, we need to have miners' voices in the dialogue, even in the design of the interventions. In fact, prior to coming to PACT, an NGO, I was working in private sector consulting, a lot of extractive companies. So I have that perspective also of doing environmental impact assessment for big mining companies. Certainly I was even involved earlier in my career with the development of the Artisanal Gold Council, who there are some representatives here. I like to remind folks of that in my work earlier on before PACT, I had the great pleasure of getting involved in this enormous global challenge of eradicating mercury. Have we got the presentation? It's coming? Okay, fantastic. All right, wonderful. Understanding the challenge and exploring some of the recent innovations. Okay, it's moving forward. I don't know if my clicker is doing the work. Okay, great. So I'll give a quick introduction to who I am, to who PACT is, and we'll move straight into sort of the state of affairs. But again, I don't want to be too repetitive, so I might move sort of quickly through it and talk a little bit about our recent project that actually has just come to an end in Ghana, but some of the key outcomes and a key sort of approach of our PACT project, working with local partners, including the stakeholders from Ghana who are with us here today. And then we're going to have our exciting panel session where we're going to hear from some other private sector partners and an NGO partner as well. Oops, sorry. All right, so for more than 20 years, PACT has been bringing together government, industry, mining communities in a supportive way focused on ASM and ASM development. We haven't only worked on gold. I'm our technical lead on the gold portfolio, so I've got a lot of experience with mineral processing and gold specifically. And that's, of course, where the mercury abatement theme falls into play. A lot of our gold programs have focused recent years in West Africa, even if we've also done work in South American context. Not so long ago with the Planet Gold project in Indonesia. We had the great pleasure of getting involved with that project as well. One of the things we pride ourselves on at PACT is a role in thought leadership. There's a few guidebooks here that I've personally been quite involved with, including this practical guide on reducing mercury use in artisanal small-scale mining. You know, we wrote this with support from UNEP with the Artisanal Gold Council some 15 years ago, and not much has changed. You know, the basic approaches to eradicating or reducing our reliance on mercury are still the same as they were 15 years ago. This document, the second from last year, is one that Susan Keane also just made a mention of, that PACT contributed to, and I'm quite proud of. The fact that it is in fact a resource that a lot of folks are going to the Planet Gold website to download. I think there's a lot of folks here in the Tanzania context that you know, could take some gems, some important learning points from this guidebook on responsible small-scale cyanidation. We saw this important gap where the cyanide code, which of course is the code that the industrial miners use, is not really written in a way that's adapted to the artisanal small-scale sector. So that was the gap we tried to fill with this guidance book to say, how do we apply the cyanide code in the context of, you know, Geita region, for example. So the state of affairs, in some ways, we've already talked about this, we haven't seen things change too much. It is exciting that alternatives like cyanidation, where it's being done responsibly, are taking hold. You know, I think Africa is catching up to what happened two decades ago in South America and Asia, where this proliferation of cyanide operations have sort of taken root. But that also comes with a lot of important new risks, right? But aside from the cyanidation, you know, trend, the situation with gold with mercury, and mercury being really relied on, especially to get the easy gold, especially to get the coarse gold, is still widespread, right? These are some recent photos from Ghana. You see the women exposing themselves to the mercury fumes. Of course, that is the most important exposure pathway, right? That's a review. Everyone knows that now. Is not so much, you know, we're not so much worried about our skin contact, but really the poisonous vapor. And the image on the right shows a situation where at least the amalgam is being burned in a controlled manner. And that's an important best practice that we really need to ensure is at least being understood by mining communities, by the people actually handling mercury. So I always start with this. When we do trainings for gold miners, we talk about the basics. This is like the 101 of mercury abatement. And these are the 5 steps of getting, you know, tradable gold, getting your gold bullion here that eventually goes to market. You got to extract the rock out of the ground. You got to liberate the gold. So you got to crush it, depending on if it's free gold. In some alluvial cases, there's not too much gold liberation that needs to happen. And then concentrate it, especially to get the heavy minerals out where the gold is trapped. And then you need to process the concentrate. And typically that can be done in 2, if we call them large categories, 2 different ways, through amalgamating or leaching, or through direct smelting. Sorry, I keep going the wrong way. So basically the main point here is that the strategy for mercury abatement is thus, right? We need to improve gold liberation, we need to improve mineral concentration, and following that, you know, let's not forget that just ensuring that mercury is handled safely, that cyanide is used responsibly, those things must be important priorities of the strategy. Not to mention that really direct smelting is a really important tool set in supporting artisanal small-scale miners in that final stage. Once they get their concentrate, smelting it instead of using mercury is going to be necessary. So direct smelting, as I'm saying here, is really critical. What you see here is one of the female miners in Ghana showing us the handiwork. At the end of the day, this is the mineral concentrate we're talking about. If you look up really close, it's really nicely concentrated. And for direct smelting to be effective, this is essentially what you need. You need not a large concentrate of 2 or 10 kilos, but you need a concentrate that's only a few hundred grams. You know, that's how we can do direct smelting. And so one of the big challenges we identified in our Ghana project is where the miners actually need support is the high grading of their concentrates, what they call the black at the end of the day. And this is a tool that can be used for that. Basically like a sophisticated sluice box. They call this the gold cube. The gold conca from APT is similar. And this is a fancy shaking table. There's different styles of shaking table, right? This one's called a Gemini style shaking table. Really good for high grading your concentrates. And notice they're also using magnets to ensure that the magnetic minerals, the iron especially, can be taken out so that the concentrate coming off of the table then can be direct smelted. Okay, so let me give you just a quick highlight of our recent project in Ghana that has now come to an end. Basically, it was a 3-year project. We had 2 key objectives. The first one, demonstrating effective production of mercury-free gold. And the second one, more broadly, working with all the different stakeholders to support them in their obligations to the Minamata Convention. So where did we start? In this case, we partnered with another local NGO called Solidaridad. That was a really fruitful partnership. It was a really real pleasure working with their team. We started with awareness raising, radio programming, community forums, posters at mine sites, just to give you some examples. We also started with mercury management, how it is handled. Are they aware of the retort options? These are some of the options we've worked with in the African context for retorts. What we see constantly, and maybe you'll be aware of this too, is that there's a resistance from miners to actually use retorts regularly. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into it now. This one, for example, this is one of the retorts we tried to pilot in our project in Mali. But unfortunately, there's no easy way with this style to actually reuse the mercury. Whereas with the pipe retort, at least you can recover the mercury and reuse it, which I think is a really important factor. At this site in Ghana, at least you see they have a caution sign, mercury vapor. It's at least in a controlled way. The education and awareness has reached the miners in the sense that if you're burning amalgam, you go and you do it there. So that's, I think, a promising and a best management practice that we need to encourage and insist on. So our project in Ghana had a unique opportunity. What we did is we partnered with 6 different mines, and we sponsored those 6 different mines to, we supported them with an evaluation of what kind of equipment would work best for them. And so you see some photos from this work with the installations. The project was supported by the U.S. Department of State. It was a humble project, it was, when we started, it was less than $500,000, but we managed to support several mines with the procurement and installation of these sites, and then used the mines to have other miners come there and learn from those experiences. In the instance of this mine is a large alluvial mine with excavators over large sluices, right? Similar to what we see in many parts of Ghana. And those concentrates would be brought to the shaking table for cleanup in order to be able to direct smelt the concentrates. Okay? So you get an idea. All the mines weren't the same. We had to adapt the technology based on the mine site's specific needs. We did a lot of exciting prototyping for direct smelting in the Ghana context. Making sure that miners understood the process, the needs, how it was a mercury alternative for them, and the biggest challenge they had, which was really high grading their concentrates. To understand that, okay, 250 grams is sort of the ideal volume to do effective direct smelting. And actually, we work with local fabricators to bring the cost of these forges down considerably. So this is the image at the right, sort of the most recent prototype, although we even have a model now with 2 torches. The torch has some interesting innovations. It's actually a Venturi torch, where it sucks air in with the pressure from the gas tank. So it's fired by just cooking gas, butane gas, but it's very effective because of the immense pressure that you charge the forge with. So in that way, a 250 gram charge that might have 1 gram of gold, that might have 10 grams of gold, we can do that in less than 30 minutes. So that was quite an exciting innovation, and the miners are in fact using those methods now. So after our 3, which became 4-year project actually, we were also sort of stalled during the COVID period. 6 partner mines, we now have evidence of mercury reduction at 4 of them, and elimination really of mercury at 1 of them. 3 of the other mines, reduction of mercury by more than 50%. And this came through training and capacity building and using the direct smelting as their main alternative at the end point once they were able to high grade their concentrates. But a lot of challenges. We really went in. One of the biggest delays we had was we were trying to insist on the mines paying for a 50% share of the equipment, right? You want to make sure the miners are invested in the solution, but it was really a problem for them. And for a number of challenges, but really the cost, the barrier of, for example, this nice gold catcha equipment that you've seen in several presentations, it costs a lot of money in Ghana. It costs upwards of 6,000 USD. So the challenge for them is just having the capital and seeing it as a top priority for their operations. In the end, they had to pay for all the transport associated with the equipment for the installations. And that's what we applied to all 6 of our partner mines. And so there's a lot of exciting learnings there. And just to give you a flavor, we've done similar projects with similar success in different parts of West Africa. This photo is a recent work from PACT in Mali, where we've done the installation of shaking tables, direct smelting, nice hammer mills and ball mills fabricated in Mali. So really, really exciting and good stuff. The local fabrication to bring the costs down has been a key priority. Here in Sierra Leone, where we've done the same, we identified fabricators in Freetown who have fabricated ball mills and local smelting techniques in the Sierra Leone context. That work is funded by GIZ. And lastly but not least, Mauritania, a different program again, but where we worked with our local partners to essentially develop a state-of-the-art R&D facility to support also the government of Mauritania to do a feasibility study to ensure that there was a mercury-free process which could replace their whole ore amalgamation process. So that process, actually, do you see it here in the photo? It uses these round cone mills. So it's a whole ore amalgamation that we don't see in the countries here, which is actually a good thing, but they use an awful lot of mercury in Mauritania. And what we found in our technical report, working with our local partners, was an improvement in gold recovery, but a lot of important metrics in this feasibility study for the mining community to reflect on. Look, the initial capital cost of the system is more than $20,000. The operators who are just using the cone mill, they're only paying about $5,000. So it's clear that there's barriers to uptake, but at least we've shown that there's a model. One of the other interesting things that jumps out here is that this new model, with the shaking table that you could see in the photo, is a huge reduction in the number of work hours. So there's a lot of exciting and interesting stuff that comes out of this kind of detailed study, which the government is now looking really closely at and trying to take forward. Oh yeah, here you see a photo of the cone mill. This is a different approach which is widespread in certain parts of Africa, especially Sudan and Mauritania, where they add mercury to all of the ore being crushed. And so you end up with the tailings as well, which is really soaked in mercury. So it's really a worse practice per the Minamata Convention. So this I wanted to underline for you once more, this best management guidebook about cyanidation. I already mentioned this actually, I won't repeat myself too much. Cyanidation is the process used by industrial miners. There are some large-scale mines looking at alternatives. Mostly they're looking for cost savings. But we know that cyanide molecule is essentially carbon and nitrogen, right? So in themselves, inert. And that's one of the nice things about cyanide. On the other hand, cyanide is of course very toxic. So the risks associated with cyanide need to be taken very, very seriously. I explained the need for this kind of guidebook. So really proud of the effort we put into it and that folks are downloading it and looking at it. These are some of my photos from the Zimbabwe context, which is not so different from what we saw, about 10 years ago I was in Geita. It looked very similar, this kind of vat leaching option, plants, This is the way the document is organized. So it's the document is not really technical. It's only 25 pages long. I really encourage a lot of folks here to have a look at it. There's 4 sections, as indicated here. The overview of basic types of cyanidation, including images. And then, most importantly, in section 3, the best management practices, drawing from the 9 principles of the cyanide code, okay, but adapting them to the SSM sector, if you will, right? I don't like to say artisanal when we're talking about cyanidation because we're not talking about artisanal mining. We're talking about small-scale mining. So these are the 9 principles. I won't go through them all, but you can see here. Principle 4 is one we think about most because we're talking about how is the cyanide actually used on the mine sites. And this is just a little snippet, a little example that operating plans in these mine sites, they must address the inspections, maintenance, water and effluent management, spill prevention and response, environmental protection and monitoring. And so these are sort of the minimum standards that anyone operating a cyanide plant, small scale or whatnot, really needs to make sure that are in place. Anyway, this is just a shout out for that important guidance, and I hope that you'll have a look at it. And so with that, I also wanted to shout out that I'm excited to announce we've got an exciting new, although small, project here in Tanzania. We just announced. So PACT applied to a solicitation from the Department of State's Mercury program, and we won a small project which focuses on cyanide plants in Geita. And so I led our team to develop a proposal. This is our consortium. Our local team includes an engineering firm called MTL, working with Tawoma, who PACT has worked with many times in the past. And also happy to say that Mwamba Mining, who you're going to hear from in a moment, is a key partner of our product design, as well as the Cyanide Institute. So the folks actually responsible for the cyanide code, they're actually an NGO based in Washington, D.C. They're sort of providing technical oversight. So the intended government partners include the Mining Commission, SAMICO, the Environment Management Council, the Chemistry Laboratory Agency, and FAMATA, Tawoma. So I'm excited to be announcing it here because I know some of you are with us. And stand by for further contact from PACT. We're providing letters, to the ministry, explaining about the project. We want your insights. We're not just going to roll out what we wrote in our proposal. We want your insights and co-design. As you see in the objectives, Objective 1 is improving the operational controls and management systems at cyanide plants in Geita region. So we're pretty excited about it. And support for government capacity for this oversight. So anyway, that's just an announcement that I'll be excited to exchange more on with many of you in due time. With that, guys, I'd love to call you up for our panel discussion. I think we can all take the stage, all three. Let me introduce you. Edward Cornell. Cornu, from Mwamba. Thanks. Edward works with Mwamba. I'll let you sort of introduce yourself further. Please have a seat. Yeah. Esmond Kwanzaa, from Pure Earth. And finally, Emmanuel Amtui, right? From, yeah, great. Thanks for being here. So my first questions are to you, Edward. Thanks for being with us. Edward is here representing Wamba. This is an exciting mining company operating here in Gator region. They've been focusing on sustainable development and value creation for more than 8 years, and have been, a strong advocate in the community around collaboration between LSM and ASM solutions. So pursuing like solutions, if you will, at both ends of the spectrum. So really pleased to hear from you. I'm going to lead off with questions for each of our speakers, and when they have a chance to respond to the questions with some presentations, we'll also have an opportunity to pose a question to them from the crowd, okay, following each of them. So, Edward, please, can you tell us about Wamba's unique business development model and vision, including how does it integrate with ASGM sector, around your working in Gaeta? And also, can you please tell us about your approach to replacing mercury? Is cyanidation, in your view, a responsible alternative? Thanks very much. Feel free to take this.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to talk to those two questions. Certainly spent a lot of time working on them. And then how do I advance the thank you. Great. It's a title page, not going to do much for us. So just to get going on sort of our unique model for partnering with artisanal miners. Before we jump in, just a little bit on who we are, so you know sort of where we sit at the table. We're an ASGM-focused sort of mining services company. We started off 8 years ago really focusing on trying to connect artisanal miners with access to CIP facilities. This was really our North Star for a long time. More recently, we've started taking a more active role in trying to see how we can improve efficiency, unlock safety at the mine site, and sort of in adjacent functions that are not processing. And then are now getting into some large-scale work as well. So in the future, we'd love to see large-scale gold mining companies play a big role in the solution, because ultimately they safeguard the resources, the expertise, that stands to really fast-track the kind of outcomes that I think everyone in this room would really like to see. So talking a little bit about that increase in scope and what we're offering, we're really showing up as a mine services partner that can help an ASGM with their needs all the way through the life cycle. So whether that's planning with drilling or sharing of data we've already been able to secure on the area. Mining, really that's about mechanizing their mine to increase the amount of ore they get out of the ground and how safely they do it. There's playbooks for how to do that. And right now they're operating well outside of those. And processing, obviously, the North Star we've been pursuing is trying to get them that 3x on the ore that they're able to get out of the ground just through the higher processing efficiency. We recently started developing our planning capabilities, ordering drill rigs, et cetera, because we kind of had the epiphany that if you're going to invest in a mine, you have to treat it like an investment. What is the potential? And am I going to scale your production just to make it unsafe? Like, you really need to understand the composition, the characteristics, what you're getting into. So, I'm happy to say we're going towards a more comprehensive model than where we initially started. And the two main impacts that we're really focused on creating in our partner mines are no mercury and no child labor. Mercury is somewhat inherent to the model of processing somebody's ore, but I think it also speaks to not settling at, I'll process the ore of whoever shows up at our door, but getting really invested in trying to capture all those adjacent, more fragmented flows around that. And then the child labor, we are really sort of reconfiguring and optimizing the labor model in engagements where we're allowed to take a more active stance in sort of optimizing everything from end to end. So child labor is definitely something that we'd like to see less of. So talking a little bit about how we're actually doing that, we have two models that miners can use to engage with us. So the first is mine co-development. This is where we really come in and we do sort of a transformational assessment about how to optimize your mine from end to end. So doing some of that drilling, figuring out what the resource looks like, designing what the mechanization levels should look like on the shafts, and then processing that ore in our facilities. We currently have 3 PMLs, or for the people who don't know, 3 license holders or 3 mine sites in development for the co-development model. And we have started transacting with some other miners in our sort of second format, which is a little bit less embedded. This is just kind of like a toll milling model. We will process your ore either for a flat fee or a percent of production. We're not as invested in the mine services model. We'd really like to see steer people towards the mine co-development because we really want to create a mine site, a district that we can really celebrate and not just sort of pinpoint one element that we've been able to improve. We really think that the mining sector has potential to be something that's celebrated, and we got a long way to go, but I think it's a real outcome. So again, these are the 2 ways that we would work with someone. I think typically just from the people we've already started working with, it's the less mature, smaller mine sites that are really interested in, okay, I'll give up a share of production for an end-to-end optimization. We've seen a lot of appetite there. And then a lot of the customers that are coming up and asking, oh, can you just drill my deposit? Can you just process this stockpile of ore? Are typically more mature. They're trying to fill capability gaps. And I think there's a place for both, but really we're trying to lean on the mine co-development model more. And then just referencing the graphic over there on the left. Right now this is all very manual, just the ways that we document ore and go about vendor management, but really the dream we're building towards is more of a network of processing plants and miners and sort of a functioning ecosystem. So we're thinking about the learnings that we're capturing right now in our first implementations with those 3 PMLs and building them into a platform that will handle all of the traceability, vendor management, and then payments, which is an extremely hard nut to crack, and I think really the linchpin on this Mercury problem, which I'll get into in my next slide here. Or actually my next slide. First, I'm going to just give you a little visual on the 3 soon-to-be 5 mines that have signed up for our end-to-end co-development. So you can see here the mines in green. We've already contracted with them. We have equipment on the way to site. And we'll be mechanizing 5 shafts with the hopes of producing 120 tons or more of ore per day, which would be able to satisfy the capacity of our CIP facility in Gaeta that we recently built. You saw it. That's only forward. You saw it briefly in this image. But so we have that CIP facility. We're in a hurry to fill it using all of this ore production. So anyways, we're underway. There's going to be a lot of learning by partnering with miners and really trying to tackle like what is every opportunity to improve this. And I think there's going to be a lot of learning that we do along the way. But now just talking more specifically about production share agreements in artisanal and small-scale gold mining and how they really do underpin this dependency on Mercury as a means of monetizing, extracting gold from ore, and so on. So, on the left here, you just see a basic flow of how this would go with inherent stakeholders that would show up. So your license holder, the guy who went out and got his PML, your shaft owner, who's the guy who's arranging a labor team to go out and mine, and the laborers that just sort of show up and trying to find work for the day. Those are like the 3 key stakeholders. Sometimes you'll see a cooperative come online if it becomes such a productive mine that you need a little bit of people management, let's say. And then sometimes the landowner will spring out separately if he's not already baked into the cooperative or the license holding, or if he's not the same person or one of them. So this is sort of like what the makeup looks like, and it's actually pretty sophisticated in terms of the way it divides sort of corporate functions you might think you need to effectively run an operation. Now, the big issue and the reason there's a production share agreement is that knowing how much gold is in a bag of ore is, speculate. There's good indicators, but there's no absolute method to determine that, especially, or not especially, but when you're at the mine site and you're not going to invest in some sort of assay with a bottle roll test and all these things you have to do to get any level of certainty there. So to get around that, miners have adopted production share agreements, which means there's basically a contract for the mine that everybody has to sign up to. If, picture I'm a pit owner and I show up with my 10 laborers. I'm like, okay, I'm going to mine your plot. I ask around, oh, what's the deal around here? Oh, well, the license holder gets 30%, which means you're slated to get 40%, and the team underneath you 30. Again, sometimes that gets divided out, like this mine site management, depending on if it's a larger property or more stakeholders. But that's the basic arrangement. It's just how you divide the ore. And you might ask yourself, why not divide the gold, right? But again, there's this problem associated with not knowing how much gold is in your ore. And picture you have 15 teams. It's a competitive affair, right? They're trying to get the most gold they can as quickly as they can. So they're doing it in ore because if you said, okay, we have 15 teams, this is the total amount that you were able to mine, let's put it all together, we'll just keep track of like the total sum that you contributed and then pay you based on that. And you'd have to assume all the ore had the same grade. And these people, they fancy themselves to be very skilled, very sort of particular about how they go about it. So anyways, there's a lot of barriers around actually, and then the second one is redistributing gold is also tough because there's typically going to be 1, 2, 3 people that have direct oversight over that gold pour, and there's going to be up to 150 people waiting at mine site, hoping that all of that was done above board without any malpractice. So the people generally prefer the sort of ease and transparency of just getting their sack over any potential like 30, 40% efficiency of going through this whole, let's pool our ore and then seek out this processing technology center. So that creates a really hard problem. And on the right here, it kind of shows what happens at the end of the day when you have a production share agreement. And this is actually the typical sort of mine size in Tanzania based on a World Bank study I recently read. It's like picture we have a mine here where we have just one license holder. We have 15 sort of shaft teams, so 15 pit owners, and then 150 laborers. At the end of the day, everybody's just being allotted a share of ore. The pit owner is going to have 30% of the mine production. He's going to have options. He's going to be able to maybe build a cyanide leach facility, go buy those services. He's got optionality, but as you go down and you look at the amount of fragmentation that happens for pit owners and then specifically laborers, it's a very different picture. And these percents are out of the total mine's production, right? Like, we'd have to know how much they're making to assign absolute values, but you can just see how if there's 150 people at the mine site with 0.2% of the total production for that mine, they're not going to get too creative. They're not going to go to too many lengths to get marginal efficiencies on that ore. So at the end of the day, what you find is, again, the people who accumulate large sums, they'll seek out your locally available cyanide leaching facilities. The people who are getting small bags, small allotments, they're really content using Mercury for fast, cheap, easy liquidity that they can use to eat that day. So any sort of processing solution has to overcome this because cyanide leaching technology, CIP technologies, the ones predominantly used by industrial large-scale miners, are at-scale technologies. You need very large batches of ore to do this, and preferably homogeneous ore, otherwise you have to play around with the chemical mix. So, what do? You have all these people that want to have their own bag of ore, and in order to connect them with Mercury for reprocessing, you need to convince them to actually aggregate all the ore, which is what they've spent all this time sort of building a system that disaggregates it. So at Mwamba, we started doing this just by essentially converting that production share agreement into a smart contract. So picture the way that we would onboard a mine site is we go to a license holder, verify that they are indeed the owner and in good standing of this mine, that it's licensed and so on. And then we have them input the smart contract for anybody that wants to work on that mine. And then invite pit owners through the app. Like, hey, you're allowed to mine on my site, you're allowed to mine on my site. Just creating, just doing that, a level of visibility into like the organizational structure of mine that doesn't exist today. But anyways, as we go on, once you essentially license these pit owners to be able to request ore pickups or sell their ore, we come to site and we're not like exploding the production share agreement system. We're just codifying it so that we can then, once we have all the information, so the top-down contract is this. The laborers who are looking at 150 people and 30% of the month's production, how do they allot those bags? It's rigorous. You have to sort of take down exactly, I've got 5 bags of shaft A. Bob doesn't want 5 bags of shaft B because he didn't mine that shaft, and he fancies shaft A to be better, and he fancies himself a better miner than Ken. So like, you really have to get very, very detailed about the kind of information you're gathering to get to a point where we show up, we pick up all the ore, we bring it to our shaft processing facility, and we send direct payment to every single stakeholder at the site with a very transparent dashboard about all the metrics that matter. For your shaft, this was the measured gold content. We did bottle rolls, so this is the expected recovery. That's the direction we're going to try and crack this nut. Because if you look back at sort of law firms, we showed up with my service model and they said, yeah, we'll process your ore. You can pay us up front, or you can pay out of production. The people showing up at our door would be the license holders, the landowners, the people that have a natural sort of aggregating position within these mine sites. So that's not really even eliminating mercury. Those people are probably going to go down the road and go to a cyanide leach facility, which, yes, probably has a whole bunch of mismanagement issues associated with it. But if you really want to eliminate mercury, you need to find a way to consolidate the ore supply, which isn't happening today. And that's part of the reason we're really excited about the mine co-development model is, we have a pretty good idea about how we're going to design the system, but it's going to take, working hand in hand to design exactly how we're going to overcome the laundry list of barriers that have sort of perpetuated this production share system for so long. So yeah, we're kicking off. We just finished our CFP processing facility this month. We're currently commissioning and look forward to, we're running material from one of our mine services customers, but we're looking forward to turning our focus to upscaling these 5 partner mines in the Gay region.
Thank you. Thanks. That's very interesting. I think before we go, thanks for a hand. Is there any questions? I think what we'll do is we'll do sort of one question for each presenter before we move on. I think that way it's easier to keep the conversation going and focus on what we've been discussing. Does anyone have a question for Edward? Here's one.
Hello. Is it on? Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Sorry. Thank you. That was really fascinating to unpack the PSAs and to get a sense of how you're structuring it. Very, very interesting. My question is around so you're setting all of this up and there's full-blown mining kind of operations and partnerships and I like the 2 structures that you're incorporating more artisanal mining and small scale, recognizing the difference. What's happening at the end of the life cycle of the mine? Is there kind of a thought of the full kind of project with these partners around mine closure and rehabilitation of that land? What is kind of coming up at the opposite end of the production?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, typically these artisanal miners will just walk away from the mine site and end up with what is a huge hazard, if not an eyesore. You got super deep shafts and close proximity, sometimes not very visible. So part of what we would do, assuming that, let's say they truly exhausted the resource, in any development model, there's not more money on the table to be made. Then we would go to do proper mine closure. We're starting to explore exactly what our sort of tailor-made solution is there. We haven't been lucky enough to get to the point where we're retiring one of our partner mines, but we're thinking of the obvious work of filling the shafts, planting trees. We've been evaluating a few different vendors to do that. But really the outcome that you would hope for is, help these miners be as productive for as long as they can on that site. But when miners hit the water table about 15 meters down, they're not really able to get around that too easily because it just keeps filling the shaft, and that's usually when they call it quits. And large-scale development models have sort of solved that. So that would be one thing that we would assess anytime there's sort of a mine closure event ahead of restoration. We'd actually maybe do a little bit more drilling and sort of exploration to see what the characteristics of the resource is at depth before walking away. I think it's likely if they did a full co-development engagement, we would have that visibility before we got to that point in time about whether we were interested in developing it. And because, again, formalization is all underpinned by land rights, that would actually give those miners sort of a financial reward for that mine in perpetuity the day they walk away if we decided to then come in and develop it in large format. So.
Thanks for the question. Thanks very much, Edward. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question, and something in this responsible mine life cycle that is such a fundamental aspect to consider. I'd be really interested, actually. Maybe that's one of the questions we can have your comments on as well, Emmanuel, after from the Ghana perspective. But thanks very much, Edward. That was fantastic. I'm sure you'll have some more conversations afterwards. Great. All right. So next speaker, I'm really pleased to welcome Esmond Kwanzaa to the microphone. Esmond has been working with Pure Earth for some time and is excited to talk about a mercury recovery solution. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. To address your questions, I think I have some presentations. Okay. All right. Whilst we wait for the presentation, Pure Earth is a global NGO focused on addressing
No, we're changing the slides. Yes. They're working on it from the back. Yes. It's the same slides, media team, it's the same slides. So you point here, mainly, yes. This is where you point.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. So, Pure Earth, it's a thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your patience. So, Pure Earth is a global non-governmental organization focused on addressing and solving lead and mercury pollution. We have presence in 25 countries, and we are headquarters in New York. We are blessed to have detailed and experienced scientists who we've been working with over the years to be able to solve these issues. Like I said, we specialize in solving toxic pollution in low and middle income countries. We have more than 50 interventions across the world. One key thing we've been doing in the last decade is identifying toxic sites. and we have over 5,000 toxic sites in our database. In fact, the largest database where you can find all the toxic sites. We are still discovering more and adding more. Out of this site, 627 toxic sites are actually mercury polluted sites. And the most concerning is that 495 sites of this are from the artisanal small-scale gold mining sector, representing 78%. Pure Earth has been advocating for responsible management of mercury from artisanal mining operations. And one of the areas is the tailing management. The poor management of ASGM in tailings, especially with mercury contaminated, has become a very important factor and issue across these sites. We can see some examples from Peru, Indonesia, and Ghana of heaps of tailings. Now, these tailings are the byproducts or the waste product after the gold is extracted. Now, because of the process of using mercury, in most of the cases, these tailings are contaminated with mercury. So what Pure Earth has done is to carry out a technical assessment of the best available technologies that can actually solve this pollution in the tailings. Our technical experts came out with a very, very wonderful technology, which we call the copper plates. The copper plate technology. Now, the copper plate technology uses copper plates coated with silver to remove mercury from gold mining tailings. How does this work? The copper plate is coated with silver and arranged in a container or any kind of setting, either the horizontal or zigzag. The mercury contaminated tailings are passed over silver-coated copper plates, and this silver attracts and captures the mercury, leaving a cleaner tailing process. This process has been tried, piloted, tested. I think we had funding from the Department of State to try this in Colombia setting, where there was a second testing of combining this with another process to extract gold as well from the tailings. But I want to sound a caveat. This is not mercury-free gold mining technology. It is a technology to actually recover mercury from the contaminated tailings. Just want to cite that because there are so many literatures out there that include this technology as part of it. Pure Earth has not seen that yet. We haven't arrived there yet. It is still being tested and tried. For now, its purpose is to recover and capture mercury from the contaminated tailings. One good thing about this is that it can actually capture or recover mercury up to 84% from the tailings. That's what makes it one of the best so far as we continue testing and perfecting this process. Which context can this be applied? Small-scale mining operations, where small-scale mining operations are present across the world, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the rest. Areas with high levels of mercury contaminations in tailings, this technology can be applied. It requires low level of investment for miners. And as we all know, as speaker after speaker, most of the ASGM miners do not have the financial muscles to afford expensive technologies. But this is affordable and it can be practical. Feasibility and easy implementation in the field its usage on the field, it's easy, simple, and so it makes it easier for anyone to be able to adopt this technology to remediate contaminated tailings. It also minimizes energy and water consumption because the tailings would have to be treated by mixing a bit of water to the tailings and then passing it through the technology provided for it to be able to capture and retain the mercury. So it's easy and it's affordable. So its practicality and economy. This can be manufactured locally. Once the artisans are taught, once the miners are taught, it's easy. The copper plate and silver can be made locally, making it, accessible for miners to use. Again, as I mentioned, its usage, ease of use. The process is relatively easy to implement, requiring minimal technology. In fact, all you need is 12 volts of battery and silver nitrate solution to be able to manufacture the copper plate and a coated silver that would be able to capture and retain the mercury on it. Cost effectiveness compared to other mercury removal methods that our experts have studied, this is very low cost for everyone to do that. It is very low cost for every miner to be able to afford. And like I said, it has higher efficiency of recovery, up to 84% from the tailings. Now, our study in Colombia revealed that for every 63 grams of mercury that is captured or recovered, only 3 grams escape with the tailings, which makes it one of the best. In fact, in the Colombia context, it's actually 93%. But other tests average 84%. This is a study that is still ongoing, and as we try and test it by our experts, we hope to achieve the 100% maximum. Now, the second question is how approaches to lasting behavior changes around mercury usage and lead. Now, our work across the world has taught us one key thing, one key driving factor or approach that can actually shape behavior around the use of mercury and lead, and that is education and awareness. Education and awareness. One thing Pure Earth does is using evidence from data to be able to engage the people that matter, the authorities, and also educate. So in the context of Colombia and Peru, we've engaged the miners on the effects of mercury, how it affects their bodies, and in fact, we've seen that throughout yesterday and today. And they're able to buy into it. I mean, once they see the effects, some of them don't even know that, this thing we work with is hazardous to our health. But through this evidence of data and showing them pictures of what this does, they are able to buy into this. So informative campaigns is very key. In Ghana, we had a collaboration with Mineral Commission to engage miners. And I was shocked with how they are very embracive and understand some of these challenges, and how the education and campaign and training program for miners, ASGM, workers in particular, is very key in addressing this issue. Secondly, community engagement. Involving local leaders in this is very key. So, for example, in Ghana, Pure has been funded by the UK government to conduct a study, Mercury Impact Assessment in the Food Chain. And this has been done in collaboration with one of the government agencies. And one of the key driving components of this project is to engage the community members. So we're doing this with them. And at the end of the day, if they see the impact of mercury and what it does to all of us. If mercury is found in the food, mercury is found in the fish, mercury is found in the water, everyone becomes very apprehensive, and caution will be taken to ensure that we are all doing the right thing to solve the issues of mercury pollution. Pure Earth, I would like to end here by saying that Pure Earth would like to commend all government agencies or all individuals that are working so hard to ensure that the mercury usage is completely reduced. And I'm very proud today, seeing speaker after speaker talking about how they are working to reduce mercury usage. We hope that in the next few years we can all come back and say, wow, we've been able to solve the issues of mercury, and there are other alternatives that can be used. I think one key thing that I just skipped is alternatives. We seem to have a lot of mercury-free alternatives in the market. Unfortunately, when you speak to the miners, they have different stories. And I think it's something that we need to look out for. Let's try and look for technologies that are accessible. A small-scale miner in a village somewhere cannot afford $6,000 for a mercury-free technology. So it's very important that we focus on alternatives that are affordable, effective, and can demonstrate that it's able to recover gold to a certain level. Thank you all very much, and I'll pause here and take your questions.
Thank you, Esmond. That was excellent. Questions for Esmond, Pure Earth?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Esmond. My name is Joshua Che. I came from Foundation for ASM Development, or known as FADE. So my question is, if this method of using copper plates does not produce any fumes or harmful effect to the workers or environments, the process itself, is it 100% safe? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. Whether it's 100% safe, I will say at this stage that it's a technology that is still under study, and so I would say it's the best we've had now, or if we've had, and it's the only one that can actually, recover mercury from the tailings. But as caution, I mean, when you're doing that, you have to dress well, put in the appropriate PPEs, protective, clothing. One disadvantage is that sometimes the storage of this plate after you are done is one of the challenges. It's a key thing that we need to focus on, the disposal of these plates. At the end of the day, is where, for us, the danger is. And if there's no proper plan of disposing this, at the end of the day, it becomes a risk to the society because they become hazardous plates. And that is why we are working with various government agencies and the people that matter. So we can provide the right training on how this can be safely disposed after use.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Esmond. Yeah, it was a great question. Yeah. What essentially is happening, if I understand well, the technology is the electrical charge and the silver on the copper plates, as the mercury flows over it, it basically sticks to it, forming an amalgam, a bit similar like mercury forms an amalgam with gold. And so to clean them, you actually scrape the amalgam off, and you can recover some of the gold in that amalgam as well. But so it's an important caveat that, yeah, we're still dealing with mercury. We're still dealing with the formation of an amalgam that, of course, will also have some small gold in it. So, yeah, it's the same for retorts, this challenge. Retorts are a great technology, but guess what? They get contaminated by mercury very easily and quickly. So we think retorts are a wonderful solution, but you know what? If the miners don't understand that they now have a dangerous piece of contaminated equipment with them, they take it in their car, they take it in their home, that dirty, the mercury on the surfaces of that retort will actually off-gas in their home, right? The main issue we have with mercury is it's got a very high vapor pressure, so it evaporates. We can't see it, but even when we're not touching the surface contaminated by mercury, it's off-gassing mercury into our atmosphere. So this is the big issue. And also around the exposure pathway, it's the breathing of mercury vapors that we're so concerned about. Thank you very much, Esmond.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's another.
Is there another question? Great. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the good presentation. Mine is just a little further elaboration on this technology. If you talk about the issue of tailing, you're talking about the volumes of ores. And I can say this, this technology, it is more of chemistry part. And you have the miners, most of them are all over in the rural area where they can find gold. And they have very huge amount of these tailings. I'm just asking myself, the applicability of this technology in order to address the issue of taking out mercury from the tailing. How can it be applicable so that it can solve the problem of having mercury in the tailing, which it looks to be a global issue, particularly in the developing country?
Thank you very much. Given our experience in Colombian context, it is doable. The pilot test shows that the copper plate can process 8 tons of tailings. Can process 8 tons of tailings, depending on how the structure is composed of. But there are also processes, and that's what I said, that our experts clearly advise that there should be training, a form of training. And also, what kind of tailings are we talking? There are different forms of tailings, but we're talking about the tailings where the mercury is prepared after the amalgam, the concentrate, and then after the concentrate, they pour the mercury there. They form an amalgam, but mercury is still left in that tailing. Okay, so a point where mercury is applied, that is where the focus is. But I understand there are thousands of them, thousands and thousands of tons of them. In Ghana, for example, our mercury assessment project that we are conducting, we've been measuring the types of tailings that have these contaminations. And we discovered that those left behind when the ore is removed from probably the alluvia, those ones don't quite have, the mercury is not used at that stage. Now, the ore is sent to another place, process it, and then at the site of the concentrate, that is where the mercury is applied. So we are looking at tailings left after the amalgam is formed. Those are the hazardous ones, the point where the mercury is actually used. So, like I said, this is a technology in use. It's still being studied. This has been practiced in Colombia. It has been practiced as well in Brazil and in Peru. I can assure you that with the right conditions, with the right treatment of the tailings, it is possible.
One more question, a short one, please. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm a little bit confused on this technology. From the field, my experience from the field is when the small scale or artisanal miners send their materials to the processing, where they do processing with the mercury, the tailings belong to the second, like to the ones who are doing the processing. So are you dealing with of course they are in the chain of the miners, because although they are not doing actual mining, they are processing they're using the mercury, and then later on those tailings become their property, not the miners' property, but the properties of the ones who are processing the gold by using the mercury. So I don't know, this is how it works in Tanzania. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't know how it works in other countries. Who own those tailings? Are they the miners or the ones who are processing the gold by using mercury? And I understand that you are working on it's a cleanup process of cleaning the old tailings, which are no longer are no longer property of the miners, but the property of the processors. So how does it work because I'm kind of foreseeing the conflicts between the miners who have mined and then send to the tailing to the processors, but at the end of the day, the processors are the ones who own the tailings. So how it works and where you're working?
That's a great question. Let me just take, I think, Professor Stefan's question as well, then we can combine both. I saw his hand up there as well. Maybe an addition or a question?
Yeah, my name is Stefan Böse O'Reilly. I'm a pediatrician, so I should not comment on technical issues, but maybe, especially because I'm commenting from outside. The very first question is there any danger? You know, you cannot prove the absence of the danger. So, of course, if you rehabilitate contaminated sites, you release once again a bit of mercury. But if you don't, you leave the mercury there for generations, and the people in the area which do not benefit from mining anymore will be exposed generation after generation. So, I mean, the sooner you clean up, the better. But what I wanted to address is an issue, and you might not like me for this, but we have to think in circles, and this is why it was so important that we had the financing before. And financing said ESG criteria, and ESG means you have to think from the end. So ASGM leaves a big mess behind. And so far we always thought, okay, what can we do to avoid the mess? Fine. Free mercury technology, wonderful. But there is already so much mess out there, so many tailings, and you clearly phrased now the question of the ownerships of the tailings, you know. I work a lot in Kapwe in Zambia on this big mining site, and Anglo America, a big company, not only the small ones, left the huge tailing hills still intoxicating thousands and thousands of children every year. So this question about tailings and responsibility and tailing technologies is really one we have to think of. And I don't think that even a small-scale miner, not an artisanal miner, but a small-scale miner can get away with saying, I have no money to clean up the mess behind me. I mean, you cannot do something and leave the mess for the following generations. So this is more a comment than a question. I apologize for this, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. I think the question has been addressed. It's a responsibility of all of us to ensure that our environment is free from mercury exposure. And that is why in this work, Pure Earth is collaborating with government agencies to be able to work on this together. In Colombia, it was with the government department. Even in Ghana, we are partnering with one government agency with funding support from UNEP to try a pilot study in Ghana. So it's all our responsibility, and when government is involved, it's become easier in terms of regulation for even permitting processes and all that. So I don't know if your question has been addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Desmond. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and the other, you know, the question also underlines the economics, the incentive. Where does the incentive come from to do this cleanup, right? Whose responsibility is, and can we incentivize it? If there's a gold recovery at that stage still, then that is an obvious incentive to do that cleanup. In Ghana, we don't see whole ore amalgamation like we do in Colombia. So the question of how much mercury is in the waste is clearly one of the important considerations of this solution. You know, is it only the amalgamation basins, the maybe a few hundreds of kilos every few months that this process could be useful for? Possibly. Maybe that's the solution in the case of Ghana, which is different than... Oh, sorry. Which is different than this situation where you have whole ore amalgamation, where every week they have tons and tons of material that needs to be processed. Sorry, Esmond. But without further ado, I'm really pleased to introduce Emmanuel Antwi to the stage. Thanks for being with us, Emmanuel. Emmanuel's from Gold Empire Resources in Ghana. Let me kick you off with two questions. We've heard your Gold Empire Resources and your work come up in some of the other presentations this morning. But as a producer in Ghana, can you tell us about your operation? Specifically, what kind of mineral processing is used? And does your production system rely on mercury, or did it once rely on mercury? What would it take to go completely mercury-free? And then, if you have time, to comment also from your perspective as a gold miner operator, what are the kinds of support that programs like this one, programs like Planet Gold can do better? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Praise the Lord. Yes, when I say praise the Lord, you say hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Right, so I would like to start off by acknowledging the Ghana team and then also acknowledging Vice Chancellor Professor Amankwa. Yes, my name is Emmanuel Antwi. Okay. And I'm the MD for Gold Empire Resources Limited. Gold Empire Resources Limited was founded in 2012, but prior to that, we had established Key Empire Resources Limited, which started off as an artisanal company, small-scale mining company, in 2009. Along the way, my team and I decided to have a holding company that will manage a number of small-scale companies, which included Key Empire Resources Limited. So that is how come Gold Empire came in the list. So today I want us to discuss who we are, and then the Ghana ASGM landscape, and then also our sustainable mining approach, which I'm sure will answer your question, and then the call to action. In there we'll see how development programs like what we are discussing now can come in, and then others like Planet Gold can come in as well. So our mission is to drive sustainable development through innovative mineral processing and a focus on reducing environmental footprints and then also health risk. And then our vision is to reduce reliance on mercury in small-scale mining and promote industry-wide change. My team. So at the board level, there are 5-member board of the company, and then 7-member management team. And then we have senior managers, and then also junior staff of the company. We do also have 2 consultants that we work with as a company. Now, under the group, or the Gold Empire Resources Limited, we have about 20 small-scale mines, which includes Key Empire Resources Limited, and then we have 3 large-scale mines as well, with a mining lease, all under Gold Empire Resources Limited. So the ASGM landscape in Ghana technically can be classified into 2 main groupings, that is semi-mechanized and fully mechanized. In other ASM, the industrial minerals, you can have the artisanal ones, but when it comes to gold, we have just the semi-mechanized and then the fully mechanized. The semi-mechanized, usually you will see miners with 1 or 2 excavators, and then some very limited processing plants with water pressure and sluicing. Then with the fully mechanized, such as my site, you see a number of excavators with trough mills and then concentrators and a whole lot of processing channels. Now, the sector is mercury dependent. That is the small scale sector in Ghana is mercury dependent. It is so because mercury is legal in Ghana, and then it's also cheap, and it's also available. Mercury is cheap, and it's available. You pass through any corner, especially in the mining communities, and you're able to buy a small bottle of mercury. And so because of that, a lot of people rely on mercury. I will not talk about the health risk, and because a lot of people have spoken about that already. Now, so what is the problem? What is the barrier to using alternative mercury-free technologies? For me, putting all together, we are looking at three main barriers. One is non-availability of alternative technologies as compared with the availability of mercury in the mining communities. And then the other one is also non-affordability of site technologies. We've already talking about gold catchers, which is around $6,000. How many of these small scale miners will be able to access or buy this? And then the most important aspect of it is mindset. Mindset is also critical because sometimes you have to also take the decision and look for solution. As business people, and I always say that all small-scale miners are business people. So as business people, it's important that we go out of the box or outside the box and try as much as possible to find solutions to some of these problems that I'm talking about. Now, the changing trends in Ghana. Now, there are several limited technologies for mercury-free in Ghana now. The seemingly prominent one is the gold catchers and then the conker. It is very easy and simple because the introduction of gold catcher into the industry, what it did one very important thing. It came to replace the traditional sluicing. Now, the traditional sluicing, sometimes, if you are sluicing, let's say, about 50 kilograms of concentrate from the primary sluicing, you will realize that for 50 kilograms, you may take up to about 3 hours to sluice that. And then, at the end of the day, you are going to get about 15 kilograms of concentrate, or what we call in Ghana the black. Now, with the introduction of gold catcher, you are able to do the same volume under 30 minutes and further reduce your concentrate to about 5 kilograms. And so that came to replace the traditional sluicing of the board. And then from the gold catcher, you also move to the conker. That's what we use to reduce it even further. Then right from the conker, we do direct smelting using some of the available high technology furnaces. So basically, this is our process. First, we acquire our license, and then we prospect our land to make sure that, yes, indeed, we have economic presence of gold and all of that. Once we are satisfied with that, we move straight to the community, and then we meet the traditional leaders, and then we discuss with them that we are interested in coming to mine in their community, and so we start negotiating on what they will need as corporate social responsibility, and then we are also directed to the farmers to negotiate with the farmers so that we are able to pay compensations for the land. After that, we start mining, and then we process our ore. Now, ore processing takes place in three processes. We have the primary processing, where we are able to reduce the ore into a manageable size, and then we take it to the secondary processing. In the secondary processing, we have the gold catcher in there, where we are able to reduce it even further, and then we go to the tertiary one. That is where we use the conker to reduce it to the point that we can do direct smelting. The gold that you see there is 100% mercury-free, an ecological gold. And then also, after that activity, we also do reclamation. Now, these are the steps that we use for our reclamation. We will normally put the pebbles and everything that we find during the mining into the pit, onto the bedrock, before we bring in the topsoil to cover it up. That way, the land follows faster, and fauna and flora and fauna returns faster. A call to action, now and future. Overcoming challenges. Access to capital, technology, and formalization of the ASM sector. Access to capital, technology, a lot of people have spoken about it, and I want to just touch on the formalization of the ASM sector. To us, when I say us, I'm talking about the Ghana National Association of Small Scale Miners, of which I belong to. Formalization takes place in about 3 processes, and we think that it is also not a one-stop event. It's a continuous process. First, we'll talk about the licensing of the miner, and then second, we'll talk about how they are able to formalize their operations. They are able to bring in technical expertise, observe occupational health and safety issues, and then environmental issues, just reduce the environmental footprint and all of that. How the miner is able to organize their mine, including governance. And then the last bit is how the miners' front is also organized. How miners are encouraged to form associations, and then also at the mine site, how workers are encouraged to form unions in order for them to be able to channel their grievances. So in Gold Empire Resources, for instance, we have Gold Empire Workers Union, where the workers are able to discuss with management their issues and the issues that they want and all of that. And then also stakeholder roles. We must emphasize on development projects such as what we are doing now, and then Planet Gold and others. Their key role in educating and also engaging stakeholders as we are doing here is very important, so that we are able to come together and identify a common problem such as Mercury and find solutions. I'm sure you agree with me that we found a lot of solutions here, and we are still making our notes, and so it's important that we encourage such programs so that we are able to benefit from their follow-up. Now, government it's also important that government should also take part. Usually, I will talk about how we are able to deal with situations like this, the small-scale sector, with a model that we call 4 E's and A. 4 E's and A. So we talk about engineering. Engineering addresses technology, and then all its associated issues. And then we also talk about engagement, so as we are doing here. And then we talk about education. Education takes the form of campaigning, telling people what is happening, what others have done, and all of that. And then we also talk of enforcement. This is where the government comes in. It is important that government is able to make laws and regulations that are flexible and also targeted, not the general ones, so that miners can follow through. And then again, if government engage miners, I'm sure that the outcome will be win-win for everybody, and they will know, so they will just get a buy-in of the miners as well. Now, mining companies such as ourselves, we also have a role to play, as what we are doing already. Then we have the NGOs, we have local communities, and all of us, we come together to support responsible mining as we all hope for. Vision for the future. We have to promote responsible ASM for socio-economic sustainability, call for investment, partnership to scale mercury-free initiatives. Thank you very much. Asante.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Any questions in the crowd for Emmanuel? Here's one. The mic is coming.
Ok, merci. Il va devoir porter un casque pour comprendre mes questions. Ok, merci à vous tous pour vos présentations. Mes questions sont relatives à la dernière présentation. Je suis navré de ne pas retenir son nom. Pardon? Voilà, c'est ça. La première question, c'est de lui demander, quand il parle d'acquisition de licence, il fait référence à quel type de licence? Est-ce qu'il s'agit de la convention minière qui est signée avec l'administration minière, ou bien est-ce qu'il s'agit du certificat de conformité environnementale, c'est-à-dire le quitus environnemental qui est délivré par l'administration environnementale? Ça, c'est la première question. Bon, depuis quelque temps, moi, je cherche à comprendre. Je n'ai pas de questions par rapport aux présentations des universitaires, parce que les universitaires enseignent les résultats de la recherche, mais quand même, nous autres administrations, en tant qu'agents de l'administration, nous autres coordonnateurs de projets, nous agissons dans le cadre de la réglementation. Donc, normalement, les activités, normalement, nos présentations doivent se reposer, de mon point de vue, et fondamentalement sur la réglementation en vigueur, ou bien sur les réglementations sectorielles. C'est avec lui que j'ai senti un peu dans sa présentation vraiment faire référence à la réglementation. Maintenant, quand il parle de rapprochement vis-à-vis des communautés, de négociation avec les communautés, est-ce qu'il s'agit de consultation ou bien est-ce qu'il s'agit d'audience publique? Et à quel moment ce rapprochement, cette consultation vis-à-vis des communautés intervient-elle? Est-ce que c'est avant la délivrance des autorisations administratives requises ou bien est-ce que c'est après la délivrance de ces autorisations? Donc ce sont ces questions-là que j'ai souhaité poser pour qu'il nous apporte davantage de clarification. Maintenant, s'il n'a pas bien saisi, peut-être David, qui parle bien le français, David Stapper, peut-être pourrait aider. Merci.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Irichi MP.
Oui, ravi de faire votre connaissance. Merci.
Thank you. So you can call me Emmanuel. The license is signed by the minister in charge of lands and natural resources in Ghana. So it's the signed license by the sector minister. And then the consultation with the community, we have two ways of doing it in Ghana. Before the mining license is issued, first, there's a publication in our National Gazette, which takes a statutory day of 21 days for the community that will be affected by the mining activities to come forward, and if they have any objection, they can come and write to the appropriate agencies and commissions to respond to them. And then again, the gazetting notice, copies are also given to the traditional authorities and then the communities as well. By licensing also, I was also referring to another part of the license, which is the EPA permits, which is also issued by another agency. In Ghana, we call them EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So they will also issue their permits. And then again, we will get what we call a digging permit as well from the Inspectorate Division of the Minerals Commission. We were asked to utilize 10 minutes and then also prepare 5 slides. That is why I did not explain to detail some of those ones. Because if I am to take my time and go through, I would have prepared about 50 slides and spent about 3 hours or more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really. This is a fantastic question also to the definition of responsible mining. We see it in the media these past months in Ghana. It's a very political issue in Ghana. The rivers are being contaminated. This type of mining, alluvial and colluvial mining, where the forest needs to be cut, is it the EPA who says what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? I commend you, Emmanuel, for this explanation of your company's priorities to refill pits, to bring topsoil back, to reforest those pits. That should be standard practice. There's obviously an enforcement gap and a huge challenge. Are we in the permitting process establishing that yes, these deposits are economical because we're internalizing those costs in the financial model for this type of mining, right? I think that's such a fundamental question when we're trying to define what is responsible mining. A question I have for you, you don't need to answer it now, but what is the cost that your company sets aside for reclamation and mine closure? This question came up earlier. It's a fundamental question that is quite different in this alluvial and colluvial type of mining, where you have really large landscape impacts. We don't see that so much in the hard rock underground mining. The mine closure costs are very different. Anyway, that's a fantastic conversation starter and thing to reflect on. Thanks very much, Emmanuel, for your presentation. Very, very interesting. I think with that, we need to close the session, but I want to, once again, please, a big round of applause for our esteemed guests, and thanks for the opportunity.